This next question's from Twitter, and I kind of feel like everybody could weigh in on this one. We talked about this morning in our morning meeting. @reallyher_ty asks, do you guys think that the purpose of the documentary trailer that was played yesterday in court places Melly at the scene of the crime, as the words at the end said something along the lines of YNW, Melly, and his two friends were victims of a drive-by shooting? And we were talking about this morning because Detective Moretti was asked about this yesterday on the stand before the clip was played. It was posted less than 2 months before the homicides, or after the homicides, December 4th of 2018. And he said that really interested him, or piqued his interest and made him curious because, and then the defense objected. So Brian, I'll start with you. You know, it sounds like it puts Melly in the car, but we don't know if he put that text on the screen.
Yeah, so there's a number of issues there. I was trying to look at the text of the screen. I thought it said something about he was the target of a drive-by. And to that I would say one of two things. One, did Melly write it? Two, did someone who actually produced that write that as a screen grab of what they perceive this to be? And three, that's not the way the English language works. I'll make it this way. I'll do it the same way I would argue in front of a jury. I used to live in Toronto. I still pay bills there and help out. I drop off my child every morning in Harlem. I work in what, 32nd and Broadway, where this recording studio is, and so I can be at any three places. If someone goes and shoots up those locations, they are targeting me, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually there. I could be on vacation. I could be somewhere else. Just because you know where I may be and you shoot up that place, it doesn't mean that I am there. That's what I read there. I don't see how that means that because you're targeting me at a location, it means that I'm actually there. If they want to walk into that argument, by all means, I would flip that on them, and I would tell the jury, I want you to sit back and cross your arms when they make that argument on summation and just shake your head at them. And as they make that argument, because prosecutors often walk into it, and they start to see jurors do this as I told them to, I'm sitting back, putting my feet up, and I say, yo, YNW Melly, your next rap video, I want my name in it, because we're walking. Because that's a ridiculous argument to make.
But doesn't it, what matters is what piqued the interest of the detective. He said he saw it, and that made him kind of go, you know, because Bortland did not say that Melly was in the vehicle.
I'm glad it piques your interest. I'm sure a lot of things pique your interest. It doesn't actually make it fact. Officers have their interest piqued all the time. You think if piqued interest in an officer should mean conviction of a death penalty trial, then by all means, I have a million people in New York City that are piquing police officers' interest, and we should put them all on death row.
Well, I mean, it was 4 years ago, almost 5 at this point, 4.5. So I thought it was interesting, and, you know, it'll be up to the jury to give any weight to it at all. We don't know if they're going to give it any weight. Terry, I know you thought that it helped the defense.
I did think that, Anjanette, and here's why. In my opinion, it does show Melly and Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams working together. They're in the studio. They're expressing, you know, love for each other. There's no question that it's endearing and that they had a very strong relationship. And I think the words at the end, whether or not they were targeted or whether or not he was in the car, it is sort of giving homage to his two friends. They were shot and killed shortly after, you know, this video was made. They were shot and killed right before that, and then the video was made. So I think it's sort of showing that, you know, he's recognizing them, he's acknowledging them, he's giving homage to them. And, you know, he looks very pensive. He's looking out over the ocean. He doesn't look like he would have shot up his friends if, in fact, he has such a close relationship. And the other thing I'll say, Anjanette, is I don't think if the defense wanted to get that in, they would have been able to get it in because it's self-serving. And so at least I think that's the argument that would have been made. So I think it actually, all in all, it favored the defense.
Can I weigh in on this? Because this is such a hot button
Yes,
target.
of course, Linda.
A target on this. Not only with the peaking of the interest that Brian has said, I think the defense can now argue, you see, even this piques everything piques his interest. Why? Because they targeted him as being the defendant, as the one they're going to go after. They had blinders on. This is what the police were doing. So everything they see says it's Melly, and they didn't really look beyond that because they wanted the high-profile defendant. They wanted Melly. And if that piques their interest and that says, hey, he's guilty, then all their evidence is as suspect as that.
Well, that's where they're going with this, Linda. David Howard said in his opening that the investigation was botched and that Moretti saw this as his chance to be a star. You know, he was going to get the celebrity put in prison for this. So that's definitely where they're going. So it'll be interesting to see what else they do with this. What I thought it was interesting, too, is that they played a 90-second clip. It's a 20-minute documentary. So obviously they played a condensed, shorter version. Why? I'm not sure. But it was an interesting watch. I watched the whole thing last night. Let's go to our next question. If all the shots were fired after they passed, shouldn't they get life for that regardless? This is from Ryan Mercer from YouTube. Terry.
Well, look, the shots that killed the two victims, at least according to the medical examiners who did the autopsies for each of them, were from inside the car. At least that's what they're claiming. And then the prosecution is saying that it was staged, that in fact the car was, shot up by both of the defendants and trying to make it look like it was a drive-by. Now, the death penalty is for crimes that are, heinous and atrocious, and they're asking for the death penalty because they are claiming that it's exactly that. They're claiming that it's gang-related. They're claiming, that it was something that was premeditated. And so because of those reasons, that's why we have that death penalty. I don't know if this is a case that most people would say is a death penalty case. The fact that they drove and ultimately shot into the car to make it look like something, at least that's what the prosecution is claiming. Does that make it a more aggravating factor, more heinous? Perhaps, and perhaps that was one of the issues that went into the prosecutor trying to decide whether or not to make this a death penalty case. So the totality of the circumstances, I think, is what made them decide to do it, whether it's the right thing to do or not. We've had some discussion about, death penalty is very serious. Do they have enough evidence to make this a death penalty case? Will the fact that it's a death penalty case make the jury think twice about convicting? Those are all the things the prosecution should have taken into consideration, and I'm sure they did, and they decided to bring it as a death penalty case.
Mm-hmm. Our next question, Linda, comes from XO_Nikki_from Instagram. When did Melly say he wasn't there or that it was a drive-by? Is this not hearsay? Only Bortland is on record saying it was a drive-by, not Melly.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. Melly did not, unlike Bortland, give a statement, and Cortland Henry give that statement to the police. But the defense argument is that, hey, you haven't proven he was there. I mean, he left the car. I mean, they're basically asserting that, right? And so that assertion is something the prosecution has to disprove because they haven't really objected to, which is why they're going so far into the weeds of this phone to try to say, hey, the phone was in, 4,000 steps or 3,000 steps of the location of the shooting, and therefore it had to be him who was there. He couldn't have left the car. So that's where it's all coming from.